Okay, with that, we're next going to hear Phil Jacquez. He's with the U.S. Department of Agriculture Natural Resources Conservation Service, so NRCS, not to be confused with the NRCDs. NRCS is a great partner of the NRCDs as well as the AACD, because as you probably remember, the NRCDs work with federal, state, local agencies and other entities to get conservation funds, and all the private landowners to get the work on the ground. So NRCS is a key partner. So Phil, thank you so much. I am going to read your bio, and thank you for joining us. So Phil Jacquez, he is the district conservationist for the Chandler office for NRCS, the U.S. Department of Agriculture. He is the acting district conservationist for the Casa office, so out there in Pinal. He's been married for 37 years. He has 3 kids and 1 grandson. He has a Bachelor of Science in Environmental Resources and Agriculture with an emphasis in range management from ASU. Yay, go Phil. He has a 32 years with NRCS. That's impressive. Last 15 years, he's been the district conservationist over Chandler, and now again, the Casa Grande office. He's currently the organic champion for Arizona, and he's seen an increased workload with the small producers growing organic vegetables, installing high tunnels. He's got quite an impressive resume and a lengthy career with NRCS, and again, one of our great partners. And with that, Phil, I will unmute you and let you take it away and share your screen. So thank you, Phil. Can you hear me, or can we hear you? There you go.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers. There we go. So if you can hear me, I'm just going to get my screen set up. Wait a minute. Bear with me here. Just got to click the right buttons. There we go. Everything coming on screen over there. There we go. Okay. So sound coming through still all right? Okay, you guys are muted, so I know I'm not muted. Anyways, I first want to say thank you, Nancy, for talking about the conservation districts, because if the conservation districts weren't where they're located, NRCS wouldn't have an office there. So it is important to have locally led conservation and have good conservation partners through the districts, and also partnerships with other entities to help us achieve conservation. My presentation today is going to talk about specifically the Farm Bill programs. And there's 6 programs, but I will be focusing on 4. The Environmental Quality Incentives Program, also known as EQIP, Conservation Security Program, CSP, Agricultural Conservation Easement Program, or ACEP, and the Regional Conservation Partnership Program. Now, the Environmental Quality Incentives Program has been one of our more popular programs throughout the state. Competition is very fierce, and so these applications have to go through a ranking process, but it is important to understand that there needs to be a conservation plan in place as well, because it's those conservation practices and resource concerns that help provide NRCS and the producer an idea of what the potential contracted practices are. As the slides show, it is competitive. The land has to be eligible, the person has to be eligible, and every application is ranked, and the higher scored applications then are selected, pre-approved for funding. But the contract is not active until the NRCS contracting officer obligates the funds, but there's usually a second level of review to make sure the plan and the contract are sound. The timeline for EQIP tentatively for fiscal year 2021 is any new applications a field office receives, the cutoff date is January 4th. So any applications after January 4th would be kept in a queue and or deferred, so to speak, until the next funding cycle. Any existing applications that were deferred in 2020 then are promoted in order to be considered for eligibility and ranking. So then the next date, March 26th, is when the offices complete the application eligibility, so the person and the land or the entity, and then rank. Now, if an applicant is uneligible, then we cannot proceed with ranking. By April 2nd, field offices are notified on which applications are pre-approved for funding. It doesn't mean funds have been obligated, it just means we're getting very close to that funding opportunity. So at that period of time, the conservationist is working with the applicant to make sure the practices are in a schedule of operation and they understand what the payment would be toward them as each practice is installed. And then by May 7th, all the application documents are in a set up in a database where it is undergoes another second level review before the contracting officer obligates the funds into those contracts. And the deadline for that is June 4th. Now, after June 4th, a contract has been obligated, the participant is notified. Does it mean they can start implementing practices? No. NRCS must comply with the National Environmental Policy Act, so we have to make sure environmental and biological clearances are completed before any construction can begin. So that's cultural resources and threatened and endangered species. Once we have those clearances, the participant can proceed with construction. The next program is the Conservation Stewardship Program, and like EQIP, Environmental Quality Incentives Program, it is a voluntary program. NRCS can accept applications throughout the year. It too also has a specific deadlines for ranking and funding. At this point in time, we have not been notified of those deadlines yet from our national headquarters, so those are pending. Now, when an individual applies, they must include all their agricultural lands in their operation that will be under a 5-year term conservation stewardship program contract. So you identify all your land in your operation when you meet with your conservationist. NRCS evaluates your current management system and the natural resources on your land. Then the eligible lands that are identified and the number of resource concerns that meet stewardship thresholds are determined. From there, the applicant has to meet the threshold for at least 2 concerns on each land use. Now, land use could be irrigated cropland, rangeland, pasture land, for example. So they must hold the threshold for 2 resource concern at the time of application, and they also must agree to 1 additional resource concern for each land use by the end of the contract to be eligible. Now, the one unique thing about CSP is it's a great stepping stone from the EQIP program. The EQIP program tends to be more structural and management practice related, but if the infrastructure is at its best, then CSP would be the next step to kind of look at enhancing your management strategies to make your farm even better or improve water quality, soil health, those kind of things. So there's more enhancements rather than structural practices within the contract. So after NRCS assessment is complete, the application chooses the practices and activities enhancements that they will implement. Then the application is ranked to determine how well your current and future management system will address national, state, and local priorities. After the ranking, well, that application is ranked amongst other eligible applications with similar challenges within a same ranking pool. So the highest scoring applications then receive a contract offer from NRCS. Now, if they decline, then it would go to the next eligible high ranking application. The next program within the Farm Bill is the Agricultural Conservation Easement Program, or called ACEP. Now, the key point with ACEP is there has to be an eligible partner working with NRCS to establish an agreement. So that's one of the key things. So it's not an individual applying their land for ACEP, it's an eligible partner. And as it shows on the slide, an eligible partner can include a tribe, state, local government, non-NGO that has a farmland, rangeland, or grassland protection program. So the next step there is, so what the process is that the eligible partner will apply to NRCS for the program, and then they work hand in hand with that partner to develop an agreement. Now, part of the enhancement for someone setting aside land for a permanent easement is NRCS may contribute up to 50% of the fair market value for the agricultural easement. The other unique thing is this program is also eligible for wetlands as well. Now, one of the other final programs within the Farm Bill cadre is the Regional Conservation Partnership Program, and also known as RCPP. With the 2018 Farm Bill, it has its own standalone funding. It went from 3 funding pools down to 2, which is the critical conservation area or a state, multi-state funding pool. All RCP projects must develop a report on environmental outcomes, so they need to show impact, partner contributions, innovation, partnerships, and management. So an eligible organization that's interested with partnering with NRCS on conservation programs can develop an application for RCP competition. Yes, it's another competitive process where you apply through what's called the RCPP portal, or there's also a request for proposals through grants.gov. But through that portal, then you can submit your proposal, and if it is accepted, then that partner will collaborate with NRCS to develop an agreement that then allows you to complete your project. Currently, NRCS is accepting proposals through November 4th of 2020. And there is my conservation information on the screen. And if there's any other questions, I'm open for questions. And thank you.
Any questions for Phil? Remember, type them in the chat box if you have any for any of the speakers going throughout. And again, I think they'll stick around. So if you even think of one later, we can go ahead and type it in. All right. Well, thank you so much, Phil. That was great. Thank you for all that information. And again, he's the acting district conservationist out there in Casa Grande. But thank you so much, Phil. Really appreciate that. I'm going to mute you now, and hopefully you'll stick around. We might get a few questions for you as we're going through. Thanks so
Okay.
much, Phil.